I'm looking to one of the things that happened in week 14 of the college football season and giving my updated rankings. I've still got Oregon at number one. They had a dominant win over Washington, 49-21, becoming the only team this season to finish the regular season undefeated. And Oregon now might be my pick to win the national championship. I've got Georgia at number two ahead of Texas, who I've got at three because even though Texas has the better record, Georgia has the win over Texas. But they're going to play this week, so that will decide that Oregon is still one in the playoff rankings, and Texas is two in the playoff rankings, and Penn State is three. Georgia did not look like a playoff team last week, though. Getting a come from behind win over at Georgia Tech after eight overtimes. They were behind 17 points at one time, and that game. Their offense couldn't do anything in the first half, but it did come to life in the second half, and their defense didn't look like themselves, especially in the first half of that game. And Texas got the win over Texas A&M 17-7 last week. I watched most of that game. So Texas's defense was great. They really shut out A&M because A&M's touchdown was a pick six. Now Texas's offense though did uh, do some mistakes, and they were not very good overall. Their offensive line, though, did play really well. And I've got Notre Dame at number four, and that's what they are in the college football playoff rankings. So they got the win over Southern Cal last week, 49-35. So offensively, they did really well because the Southern Cal's defense isn't to where anybody could score 40 something points on them anymore. But defensively, Notre Dame did not do very well because Southern Cal's offense is not to where they score 40 points on nearly everybody anymore. So giving up 35 to them was not very good. But Notre Dame is for sure in the college football playoff now, and Texas is for sure in, and Georgia might or might not get in my opinion, if they lose the game against Texas. So I've got Ohio State at number five. Georgia is number five in the college football playoff rankings. So Ohio State lost to Michigan for the fourth time in a row, 13-10. And I've been defending Ohio State all season, I know, but I can't do that anymore because with all that Michigan lost after last season, their coaching staff and all of those great players, and all that Ohio State got coming back this season, and them upgrading their coaching staff and bringing in some more good players through the portal. Them losing to Michigan, who's a five-loss team, is unacceptable. There's no reason why Ohio State shouldn't have made the conference championship this season. Now, they still will for sure make the college football playoff, and could they win it all? Maybe, but they're not going to be my pick to do it anymore. But their defense is good enough to give them a chance to win the national championship. Their defense was fine last week. It was their offense that was so bad, which really made no sense because Michigan's defense isn't as good this year, and Ohio State was able to score 24 against Michigan last year. And Penn State, I've got at number six. Ohio State is six in the playoff rankings. So I've got Penn State behind Ohio State because Ohio State beat them, and Penn State hasn't played Oregon yet, who beat Ohio State. Penn State is going to get to play Oregon in the conference championship because Ohio State lost it last week. Penn State destroyed Maryland, who's horrible, like you would expect them to last week, 44-7. And Penn State, even if they lose to Oregon, which I think they will, they'll still for sure go to the college football playoff. And I've got SMU at 7. The playoff rankings have Tennessee at 7. So SMU destroyed a terrible California team this week, 38-6. And I've got Indiana at number 8, and SMU is 8 in the playoff rankings. So Indiana destroyed who was probably the worst Power Four team in the country this season. This week, Purdue at 66-0. So Indiana is for sure in the college football playoff, but they're not going to win the national championship. But I've got Tennessee at 9, and Indiana is 9 in the playoff rankings. So Tennessee did struggle some with Vanderbilt. They got behind to them 14-0, but they did end up winning by a decent amount, 36-23. So Tennessee is for sure in the playoffs. And I've got Ole Miss at number 10. Boise State is 10 in the playoff rankings. So Ole Miss didn't look like a playoff team at all last Friday against Mississippi State, only winning 26-14. Their offense was terrible. They really only had 3 scoring drives because those 2 field goals that they kicked came just from a great field position, and their defense played terrible in the first quarter. But they woke up after that and didn't give up anything else. But for Ole Miss to make the playoffs, the only chance they would have is for Georgia to lose, because then Ole Miss might be able to pass them because they beat Georgia. Or if SMU were to lose the ACC championship, because even though that would only be 2 losses for SMU plays in a much weaker conference than Ole Miss does, so it is possible that Ole Miss could pass them. So Alabama is number 11 in my rankings, and they're number 11 in the playoff rankings. So they're likely going to go to the college football playoff even with 3 losses. They did pretty well, I thought, in the Iron Bowl, winning 28-14. I watched this whole second half of that game, and I've got Arizona State at 12. Miami is 12 in the college football playoff rankings. So Arizona State destroyed Arizona, who is, turned out to be horrible, 49-7. But they're going to the conference championship against who I've got right behind them at 13, Iowa State. I think that'll be a close game. And the winner of that game, of course, will get in, but the loser, I don't think, will have much of a chance to get into the college football playoff. Iowa State beat Kansas State last week, 29-21. So Ole Miss is 13 in the playoff rankings, and I've got BYU at 14, and South Carolina is 14 in the playoff rankings. So BYU beat Houston at 30-18 last Saturday, who was a terrible team. But BYU doesn't really have any chance at all of making the playoffs now. So I've got Miami at 15. Arizona State is 15 in the college football playoff rankings. So I don't think that Miami should be in the playoffs because their defense is so bad. They lost to Syracuse last week at 42. to 38. And I've got South Carolina at 16. Iowa State is 16 in the playoff rankings. So South Carolina doesn't have a chance to make the college football playoff, even though they did beat Clemson last week at 17-14, because they have losses to Ole Miss and Alabama, who have the same record as they do. And I've got Boise State at 17, and Clemson is 17 in the college football playoff rankings. So Boise State will play UNLV for their conference championship game, and if they win, they will be the group of five team to go to the playoffs. And if UNLV wins, they will most likely be the group of five team to go to the college football playoff. And I've got Syracuse at 18. BYU is 18 in the playoff rankings. And Syracuse, their quarterback Kyle McCord from Ohio State actually leads the country in yards passing this season. He has over 4,300 yards passing, and he threw for 380 in the win over Miami. It turns out Ohio State probably would have been better off if Kyle McCord would have stayed, because he's turned into one of the country's best quarterbacks. And I've got Clemson at 19. Missouri is 19 in the playoff rankings. So Clemson, as crazy as it is, it could still go to the college football playoff with three losses if they win their conference championship game. And 20, I've got Missouri. UNLV is 20 in the playoff rankings. So Missouri beat Arkansas last week at 28-21. I've got Illinois at 21, and that's what they are in the playoff rankings. So they beat Northwestern 38-28, who is a horrible team. And I've got Duke at 22. They're not ranked in the college football playoff rankings, but Duke beat Wake Forest 23-17, which I know isn't much, and Wake Forest is a terrible team. But what Duke has been able to do this season is impressive. So that's why I ranked them. So I've got Kansas State at 23. And Syracuse is 22 in the playoff rankings, and Colorado is 23. I've got Kansas State ahead of Colorado, who I've got at 24, because even though Colorado has one more win than Kansas State has a win over Colorado, and Colorado just does not have a good win this season. Colorado, destroyed Oklahoma State 52-0 last Friday, but Oklahoma State turned out to be the worst team in the conference. And I've got Texas A&M at 25. So I think they made a mistake permanently benching Connor Wayman at quarterback, because he was the better passer for them. And I saw today that Connor Wayman entered the transfer portal. So A&M isn't ranked in the playoff rankings, but Army is 24 and Memphis is 25 in the playoff rankings, and I don't agree with ranking them because they haven't beaten any good teams. But that will be it with this video, and please subscribe, and thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.